Oh, alright, so I haven't done a video in quite a while, but we've been getting pretty deep into a lot of different Jewish issues and topics. We're studying in my program. Um, well, I'll just go through our day. It goes usually something like Hasidus, which is early in the morning. That's like the sect, you could say, of Judaism that we study with. That's kind of like Orthodox traditionalist, sort of like, I don't know, they have some really new agey sounding like theories and ideas, sort of like the they're like the very philosophical sort of like hipsters of the Jews, um, and like the Breslov are sort of more the hippies. It's really entertaining and cool to watch them and listen to them talk about stuff because you think like, oh, religion, it's like so ridiculous. These people are so out there. They think that like, if you do such and such, blah blah blah, and it's all a bunch of hokey pokey that their God told them this or that or whatever. But really, at the bottom of it, there's so much about it, so useful, and I find myself like hard pressed to really argue with a lot of the halacha, which is another one of our classes, which is Jewish law. Like for Islam, it's Sharia. For Sharia, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, which is like Muslim law, and for Judaism, it's Halacha. I'm not even sure if there is like a particular name or like set of like, Christian laws or other ones. I know like Buddhism, there aren't laws, there are suggestions. Hinduism is very similar in that right, as well as Taoism and Sufism, and well, no, that's another like offshoot of Islam, or it was. I'm thinking of what's it called? Oh, it's up north here. Um, oh my gosh, Baha'i, which like they have like the gorgeous gardens up north in Haifa, really interesting. We have like, and there are a lot of Baha'i up north in general. In Sfat this past weekend, which I'll talk about in another talk in a few minutes. Um, there was like this. Oh, so we always have basically at like hotels and stuff. Since Jews can't work on Shabbos, they have they call them the Shabbos goyim, like people who aren't Jewish that can do the work for them. And like really, usually it's supposed to be said that if a Jew is benefiting from like something that is not like halachically or like Torah like allowed on Shabbos, then like they're they're violating the Shabbat. Like, but I don't know. It's interesting the way the whole thing works. Like, you can suggest to somebody that like, oh, the lights are really bright, but like not tell them to turn off the lights. So that's like one way of getting around that issue. Um, so this is halacha. And that's yeah, really the main thing that I wanted to talk about. I guess I'll do one for each of the type of classes we have, one video. So yes, this is halacha, and in halacha we talk about these kinds of issues. It becomes really complicated. The Talmud is where all of like Jewish like law is really laid out. Maimonides, who was an 11th century doctor, physician, and like medical treatise writer and philosopher. Um, he wrote the Guide to the Perplexed, and it was like a total expert of Jewish law. So he really embodied the like, I think there's this old age value of really knowing a lot of different skills and like areas of knowledge, and he embodied that. Like I look up to and have like so much admiration for people who like lived in those times and had all of these different professions and abilities, and it wasn't just like, oh, this is, oh my gosh, Israelis are crazy drivers. I don't know if you could hear that honking, but we live on a main road, so it happens. But yeah, I think it's really cool that even back then in those days, I guess Maimonides, the Rambam, came from like, I don't know, people are confused whether he came from Spain or Egypt, or like traveled to Egypt, that's for sure. And maybe Nachmanides was the one who came from Spain, because Rashi came from France, who was another writer. But anyways, what's important and relevant about Maimonides was that he organized and put into, I think he put in alphabetical order of the halachot, the like Jewish laws, and made them like more accessible and understandable in that way. So he also, in the way of his being a physician and a nutritionist, he wrote something called the Life Transforming Diet, which I have yet to do research on. I think it's a really interesting concept. He talked about things like not eating fruit after a meal, or mixed fruits, I think. I'm not sure. And it's so funny because these are all like new agey like things that people are talking about, eating mono meals and not eating certain things in certain orders because of how they are metabolized. And I think he was a really smart guy. Ultimately, I think that he really like found a lot of truth. And it's interesting because despite the fact that he wrote and like put in order all of the halachot, I think he was not like a terribly like not that he wasn't terribly religious, but I think there was some like objection he had to like staunch orthodoxy. I can't remember, but somebody mentioned that recently, and if it's true, I think that's really fascinating because he still had the um, the interest and found the value of writing down all of the halachot. So, okay, a few issues with halacha. Organ donating. In Judaism, you're not supposed to like maim your body, have a tattoo, too many piercings, which, well, not too many piercings, but like probably I would say gauges are like getting into that realm of like going beyond like regular repairable like pinpricks. And actually, this is an aside, but with like for women with jewelry, each piece of jewelry represents something like spiritually, or at least there's like a list or a few things that do. Like there's nose piercing, different ear piercings, like 2 gold bracelets, and they're each like the same value as like ancient like units of money, and so each one is worth 5 ancient units of money and represents the 5 commandments, each of them. So it's 10 commandments in total. A plain ring, certain, I already said piercings. I don't know about like different symbols and other things like that, but I think it's really interesting. It's cool that we have that, going on. And so anyhow, in organ donation, it's funny, everybody is like confused about, is organ donation okay? Because if you save somebody's life, then the fact that you've maimed your body is nullified. Or is it really still not okay? So I was confused even about the guy's answer. Our halacha teacher made it sound like organ donation has halachic problems, but not because of not being able to walk with Mashiach, which is usually the reason for, like, in general, that if you can't rise from your grave with your full body intact when the Messiah comes to walk with him to Zion, then, like, you have issues. Like, how are you going to do that? So, I don't know, though. I think that's sort of goofy. Like, I think it's like ideal and it's sort of more of a symbol than it is a reality, because even if and when Mashiach comes, which like Baruch Hashem he will, because the world really needs a lot of reparations, the idea that everybody's body wouldn't be repaired, like just out of the sheer fact that like the Messiah is here, then I'm confused as to what the Messiah is here for. But maybe I'm just confused as to what the Messiah like really entails to begin with. And that's a talk for another day, maybe after a talk with a rabbi. But so yes, there's that. Oh, that was in my Chassidus class. That wasn't even in halacha. Oh, I did the halacha class on veganism and kashrut. Thought that was interesting. Yeah, Gerald Schroeder. I think I did a short talk about that. Have not posted it yet. And oh no, we're back at Chassidut. Chassidus. Women in the Jewish home. I would like to talk about that, but I'm not 100% sure that that's something that we really want to put on a public forum. All of my notes are in my book now. I've been taking a lot of notes in my actual yeshiva book because we have to do like a lot of translating and stuff. It becomes really, really complicated and crazy. I'm not very good at the translation, but I'm learning. Okay, here's a few interesting ones. If you have a doubt about Torah law, in general, you go to the sfecha, which is the stringency, or is it sfeka? Whatever, I don't know. I think I just wrote it without an extra H. But, which is, okay, so sfecha is the stringency, like the highest, most, like, strict version of the law that you could imagine on your own. And in the meantime, you do that, and you can go ask your LOR, your local Orthodox rabbi, is what they say. So I think that's funny. It's cute. But so if you have a doubt about rabbinical law, though, you go with the leniency. So there's this difference between halacha that comes from Torah and halacha that's actually, that's like rabbinically ordained. So yeah, there's that difference between the stringency and the leniency. Interestingly, Halacha also talks about, I think I've mentioned this in the Judaism feminism talk, but about the women are obliged to bench after a meal. You do not repeat a prayer if you can't remember whether you already said it, because it's like saying it in vain. But you should bench if you've forgotten whether you did so. So you should redo the entire, which is like a couple of long paragraphs of Hebrew, after eating a meal more than 2 eggs size. I'm pretty sure that's what the halacha is for the amount that you have to eat to have to bench. I'm not very good at benching yet, but I'm trying sometimes. And if you, let's see, what did it say next? So prayer before eating is rabbinic law, and benching after is Torah law. So I've gotten really good at it. I always say the bracha before I eat something. It's simple. It's brachat Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, and then you say like the type of food that you're eating, which they fall into like a couple of broad categories. It'll either be fruit of the earth, fruit of a tree, fruit of the vine, which actually you only say when you're drinking wine. If you're actually eating a fruit, you're actually eating a grape, you say fruit of the tree. For bananas and pineapples, it's also fruit of the earth, and vegetables are fruit of the earth, because it means like fruit, not like actually a piece of fruit, like how we categorize vegetables and fruit separately. It means like, that the earth is fruitful. What comes forth from it, you're praying over. And what else? I don't know. I guess there's a separate one for milchik and fleishik foods, but I don't know them because I'm a vegan. There's one for mizonos, mizonot is like carbs basically that are not wheat, that aren't bread. So kernels. Somebody said curds yesterday when I asked them. I don't know. Definitely oatmeal noodles, crackers, cookies, desserts, baked goods, things like that are mizonot. And then you have hamotzi lechem min haaretz, which is the bread hamotzi, like the wheat. Hamotzi lechem is bread min haaretz, that comes from the earth. So that's a good one, because halacha says that when you say this bracha, you don't have to say any other bracha for the food on your plate, as long as you eat, like if you have a piece of bread first and you say hamotzi, because it like covers everything. So which kind of makes sense. It's like the bread of the earth. Bread is like the ultimate sustenance, they say. So you are able, because it's like so basic, so you're able to only say that one prayer for all the food, as long as you eat the bread. What other? Okay, so then this is funny. This halacha class I went into, we read. Oh wait, did we read Mishnah that day? I think that was a day that we read Mishnah, which actually I usually don't have Mishnah class because I'm in Yeshiva 1, and oh no, I'm thinking of Gemara. Or maybe they do have Mishnah, and I don't usually have. No, we read Mishnahs. So let's see. So the tractates are, I guess they're like sections. What are they called? Nasacha. In the Mishnah, there's 60 of them. Equals 60 is the genius, which is Gaon. I don't know, something interesting about this that I should have done the research on before I made the video. But so basically, the whole thing is that there are, I think it's 7 tractates talking about different halacha or halachot, and they include these 7 different groups of laws. The first including agricultural and seeding, planting laws. The things around that are basically that you shouldn't have a completely what's it called, homogeneous crop circle, that you need to cycle your crops. You can't just constantly have the same crops, which we actually find in modern farming has become a humongous issue because the ground becomes devoid of different nutrients, and that's why when you burn fields and you have all of those nutrients left afterwards, you plant something new. You don't plant the same thing as you did before, or just in general when, oh, it's really dark, I guess. I should turn around in here. But we've found that it really is helpful to plant different things so that the field will have all the nutrients in it afterwards, and you go on cycling. And also that you need to give the land a year or so to rest. And so there's this idea, I think it's called the Shemitah year, which is the 7th year of a farming cycle. You don't harvest. You don't do anything. You don't touch the land. People can come and take from it, one thing or whatever, but you don't harvest it, bring it into your home, and distribute it like you normally would. So yeah, that's the first tractate. Second tractate is on, maybe that's a part of farming. So the second tractate is farming, which is the larger, general. Ugh, I totally wrote more than this. I really hope I didn't delete it stupidly. So yeah, there's this stuff about farming, which we actually went into detail in our Chumash, I think in Chumash class, yeah, which is basically the details of this stuff. Chumash 101, we learned that when farming, you're supposed to leave food in the field for the poor. You're supposed to leave the corners of your field, which can be as much or as little as you want, but you're supposed to leave the corners, and then if a bushel falls, you're supposed to leave that. The first one and the second one, if a third falls, you can pick up all of it, but when separately dispersed throughout a field, a bunch of bushels fall, you have to leave them for the poor to come in to collect, or for other people. And that's kind of a form of, it's not considered tzedakah. Tzedakah is something else because it's money that goes to a particular cause, and that which falls from your trees, or that is ripe and comes off of a plant or whatever. Wow, it's got windy. You're supposed to give away as if it did not belong to you. It's said that, like, when you follow these practices, it's halacha because it's like it belongs to everybody. It belongs to the world. It's not like, oh, I own this field. I get to choose who gets what out of my enterprise. That's what you sell your food for. That's what you're a farmer for, for your profession for. But that's not what really is meant or intended at all with giving the leftovers in the field to the poor. So I like that. I think that's a really cool way of it, like, working. And there are a bunch of, like, specific rules about how you go about. Well, I guess I said you leave the corners and what follows, and then the next one is on women about their leverage in the marriage. Which basically there are a bunch of really interesting rules that, like, for instance, when a woman makes a suggestion to her husband, there's a I think it's a mitzvah, actually, which is a commandment, not just like a suggested, like, oh, nice thing to do. It's a mitzvah to consider her words, like, to seriously consider them. Like, if she says something, you're not supposed to be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. You're supposed to be like, let me think. Like, a woman is given 9 out of the 10 rights of speech in Judaism. It said that women have more say in the marriage, and because they're more spiritually connected, they're more emotionally understanding, and I think that like, anybody can be reasonable or unreasonable, but there's definitely something to be said for like, the assuredness of a woman in, like, her logic concerning things. She thinks of all of the aspects of things, and a man will sort of just, like, think kind of linearly often. But ultimately, they're supposed to work together to really, like, figure stuff out, because a man also studies a lot more Torah than a woman usually. This school is actually pretty unusual in just how much the girls learn. And it's because it came out of a yeshiva program, and it's not, like, terribly yeshivish, but it's, like, I don't know, it's unusual. It's cool, though. I like it. And then, so also there's the law that, I think that probably, by the way, the laws of women, I think probably incorporates the laws that a woman is basically has most of the say in what happens behind closed doors with her and her husband. She is really supposed to decide if and when she wants to do something. If she doesn't want to. She doesn't have to, unless he really, really wants to, or he's going off to war or to travel for a long time. And there's a bunch of other interesting things about that. Then, let's see, if a husband dies and he and his wife did not have any children yet, she is supposed to marry his brother, which I don't see as so terribly unreasonable. People think it's super weird, but, I mean, who would you want to be with other than somebody who was very likely really similar to the person you were with? And, I mean, it's why people cheat on each other with, like, their best friends and their, like, siblings, because they are of, like, similar upbringing. They have, the same background as the one that they were originally supposed to be with. And just, like, I don't know, to me it makes sense, like, logically, but I don't know, that still doesn't mean that it's necessarily always ideal. And then there are the monetary laws. Shoot, looking at this, I really think that I must have accidentally deleted, like, one of my notes. Anyhow, uh-oh, I just lost it. Alright, so after that, monetary laws. So monetary laws include tzedakah, I'm not sure if that encompasses taxes, but basically, if you are like pretty rich, then or like you have a normal amount of money, you're supposed to give. Most people, you're only supposed to give up to 20% of your income, because after the point that you're giving away so much of your income, you're going to become poor and not able to give to other people. So what's the point? If you're very, very rich and you have a lot of money, there's no limit. And if you're like moderately rich, I think you can give up to 30% or 40 or something like that. So that makes sense, like if you have really a crap ton of money, what do you need to do with it? And would it not be better to be shared with the greater good? I think so. If you think it's socialism, I think that's sort of unfair, because people just don't need to have as much money as they have often. And I think this of a lot of Jews, even like whatever, and people all over the place. So what next? Monetary laws, kodeshim. Wait a minute. Sacrifices and slaughter, which are the karbanis, which is the sacrifices that were given at the first and second temple mounts in Jerusalem back in the day. We still actually say the prayers during shacharit, the morning prayers. Maybe shacharit, is that right? Yeah. The daily morning prayer. You're supposed to say. It's actually, there are like a lot of references to slaughter and sacrifice and stuff, which I always think is strange, and I don't always understand. I think the concept of slaughter should exist, or of sacrifice should exist only actually, maybe, like, I don't even know. I feel like it's so strange, like, if you're slaughtering something and it's for Hashem, and we are Hashem, and everything in the world is God and godly, then I feel like it should be so pure that there's no separation from ourselves and that animal, that we actually feel so much the sacrifice of that animal. And that it's not just like, oh, we're giving this to God, because that creates a separation, and that's not what we're supposed to do. That's not how we're supposed to feel. That's not the reality of an almighty, united, Jah is one type God. So, I sort of question the sanctity that is left in that practice, which I think is actually why it's not done anymore, or a part of it. But to me, to my mind, that's a good reason not to do it, because you don't fully understand what you're doing or appreciate it for what it is. Because obviously, I think that eating animals, and it is a sacrifice on its own. What else? Sacrifice and slaughter. The laws of kosher slaughter basically have to do with killing an animal as painlessly as possible, so that you hit its like the main nerve and the main blood source to its brain, and it bleeds out so fast, like this animal won't know what hit it. And it might still have, like, and people think they can say that, oh, this is like unethical and backwards and terrible or whatever, and PETA tried to, actually I think they burned down a slaughterhouse, or did something really destructive, and it was like, well, that was a little bit contradictory, but whatever. But it's the idea that the animal will suffer as little as possible, bleed out as quickly as possible, and then, and people think because animals twitch and keep moving after they die that, they're in pain or they're suffering somehow, and that might be the case sometimes when there's, a botched slaughter that is really actually done wrong with a dull or, serrated knife. You're supposed to use, an unserrated knife that is, completely clean and, really, really super pristine and very, very sharp, because that's how it works the best. But when it's done wrong, then you have issues, and that's a whole other issue. I think that then you're supposed to do certain things with that animal. It becomes not kosher, and they actually can sell that meat to another meat supplier that's not kosher, or doesn't claim to be kosher. Purity. Oh, the purity laws are really cool. They're basically about Well, you have modesty, which is shomer negia, guarding what you touch, and that means not touching people of the opposite sex after bar or bat mitzvah age. So once you pass puberty and you start to have these sexual urges, you're really not supposed to make physical contact, or too much physical contact in some cases where people are lenient with people of the opposite sex. And honestly, having been in this community for as long as I have, and being, having this feeling of like more autonomy, and that I have at least promised to me the self-respect that I will not have certain boundaries crossed, it creates so much security and so much comfort with yourself, and the fact that it also stresses a greater physical relationship with other women and with other men, so that, like, not in a sexual way, but in a way that is comforting and that is supportive. And I find that, like, always being around women all the time, I have to learn how to deal with women. I have not had female friends in the past. I've never really done well with women, and trying to always be one of the guys has never worked out for me. It doesn't work for most girls, and I think it's really cool. It's an interesting and, like, fascinating aspect of the psychology of the practices, in religious Judaism. So, that's yeah, that's kind of, yeah, that's purity. That definitely falls under the category of purity. Oh, okay. I'm going out with two of my girlfriends to the shuk in a little bit. So I'm going to finish this up. And Nida also, I touched on a little bit, not really. Nida is like when a woman has her flow during that special time of the month. That it's said to be impure because she's having an experience of death, of cells that are coming from inside her body to outside. And so since there's, like, all of the pain, discomfort, the moodiness, and all of this sort of, like, garbled, like, negative energy coming from her, which I don't think that many people will deny, that that's just a natural like aspect of the what happens, like, psychologically, physiologically. So the idea is that you're not supposed to touch even your husband during that time. Women can touch other women. They can touch the Stolim. They can the like holy books. They can everything else. They cannot go to the mikvah, which is like the spiritual bath, the cleansing. And it actually, you're supposed to go 7 days after nida's, well, after, like, the period is over. So it's like a proclamation that I'm clean again and I can go be with my husband again. It actually works out such that those 2 weeks that a woman's having her period are not at the time, or those 2 weeks that she's having it and the week afterwards, you're not able to conceive. Usually the highest time for conception is like halfway through your cycle. So the third and fourth week, you're sort of, it's like this ancient idea that you're supposed to have sex during that time, that you're supposed to conceive during that time. And we've found later on with science that that is indeed when a woman is most fertile. So, bam, we figured out a way to really make ourselves as fruitful as possible, as is, another commandment. I think that's really neat. And then you're also supposed to wait until you finish bleeding the 2 months or so after giving birth to go to mikvah again. And yeah, all that stuff I think is really cool. Like, it's all based on human anatomy. It's not just some, like, hokey pokey, like, crazy made up, BS. And I don't know, I think that maybe it doesn't work for a lot of people. There are a lot of these things that husband and wife obviously have the choice to accept or reject in their own relationship, in their own experience. But these are the guidelines, these are the ideas that are set forth as ideal for a Jew and a Jewish couple. Let's see, what else about Nida? I feel like I might be missing something. Probably a lot of things, though, about, like, a woman and who wants what and when you're supposed to do it and stuff like that. Those are sort of a little bit risque topics, so that I don't know that I'll discuss online at the current moment. And I guess the last tractate is about damages. So I think if you damage somebody else's property, if you owe somebody money, if you, I forget what the other things are. I don't know. I'm confused. I don't think that these tractates actually um, encompass everything, because I know that there are also, unless it falls under damages, um, the idea that if somebody's trying to kill you, that you're actually halachically like obliged to kill them, because when you come into the world, you're said to be a whole world. Like every person is a whole world, and if somebody wants to kill you, then they want to eliminate the world, and the world, as it perceives to you, is like gets very philosophical and really interesting, actually, stuff that I was learning from Alan Watts in the last couple years, and it all lines up. It's really amazing. He sort of denounced Judaism as this like really stringent sort of practice, that he actually ended up talking so much about Jewish practices and values without even realizing it. It's just really amazing. But anyhow, so that's true. If somebody is coming after your life, you are supposed to kill them. You can't let them get between you and your purpose in life. Because if their purpose is to destroy somebody else's purpose, how much more of a purpose do you think that they have? What are they really accomplishing? So, and I guess it can get complicated, but I think that's kind of fair. That it's in self-defense, that you shouldn't have to, hope that you've sufficiently knocked someone out that they're not going to come after you again. Um, and I think also the whole idea of death in our society and culture is so much more overblown and like misunderstood than Judaism allows it to be, because I mean, we have laws about that you're not supposed to touch a dead body, that a dead body is impure because there's not a soul in it anymore, and it was really somebody's vessel, and that now it doesn't belong to the person, it belongs to God, because it's going to become a part of the earth again, and basically, I mean, that makes sense to me. But where was I going with this about death and dying? That your spirit and your soul is infinite, even if your body right now gets killed. And this is what's wrong with Western society, I think, insofar as like religiousness and spirituality. Even people who are spiritual have this idea that killing somebody, yes, it's an atrocity, it's horrible, somebody's life shouldn't end. Like, life is not disposable, because we can't be effective in the world if everybody's just dying and dropping like flies. But when somebody does die, we have to accept it. We have to let it be. We can't change it. And by denying it, we're denying ourselves the ability to overcome it. We're denying ourselves reality. And so, insofar as killing somebody who's coming after your life, you're kind of pushing them forward from this. Not, maybe not. I don't know. I think that this is a stretch, but like, I think everybody has a next beginning. At least I'll say that much. That everybody keeps going. We don't just die and it's over. It's like your body is the one that you have right now, but you haven't always had this body, and you've lived in this world like 100,000 times before, and it's not as black and white as life and death, and I think there's some hope in that, and that even if it's not true, having I don't know, having this whole basis though for belief and faith um, and just how uncanny so many of the similarities between Judaism and like modern New Age and like like hippie philosophies and all this different stuff. It's it's just a whole lot of different ways of saying the same thing, but Judaism just so happens to have organized it very, very efficiently in this series of books and rules that are made up out of, not made up, but that are put together out of what we have in Torah, oral law, which is now written down, and discourses between sages, rabbis, other people. Um, let's see, I feel like, yeah, I did take notes at one point on this Halacha class that I was in. I think I may have deleted it. I'm really disappointed now. Like, I thought I took so many more notes than this. Anyways, alright, that was 40 minutes. Whoa, I'm gonna go. Bye.